I had been doing work for the CIA, I was approached by my project officer who asked me if in connection with a planned invasion in Cuba, I would contact a Mr. John Roselli. We started having meetings in Miami. During one of those meetings in Miami, I was introduced to a Mr. Sam Gold, who subsequently turned out to be Mr. Giancana.
In any dirty job, such as paramilitary activities, assassinations, sabotage, and the like, what are known as special ops, almost invariably, the agency direct involvement of the agency officer, the career officer, ends in the planning stage. And sometimes even before that, just the policy decision-making stage. The dirty work will be carried out by either contract agents or one-time agents, gangsters, mercenaries, whoever happens to be available, whatever assets are available at that moment.
We were told it was important in connection with the invasion of Cuba. At that time, to dispose of Mr. Castro, and to the word dispose you can add anything you want.
It is likely that at the very moment President Kennedy was shot, a CIA officer was meeting with a Cuban agent in Paris and giving him an assassination device for use against Castro. Now, I read this, and again, I'm reading from the same report that we read from earlier. They're calling it an assassination device. Are we getting semantical here again?
I believe it was a hypodermic syringe they'd given him with something called black leaf number 40 in it. This was in response to Amlash's request that he be provided some sort of a device whereby he could kill Castro. He returned this device to the case officer. The case officer brought it back to Washington, and that was the end of the plot. Okay, but for purposes of discussion, the officer gave this Cuban, this agent in Paris, a device with that material you described in it. I presume the material, if injected into a human being, would kill him. Is that correct? I would think so, yes. So the agent gives the Cuban agent the device to kill somebody. I'm sorry I didn't give him a pistol, because it would have made the whole thing a lot simpler and less exotic. Well, whether it's a pistol or a needle, if Amlash is a political plot to destabilize the government, what in the blazes are we giving an agent a device that will kill Castro with for if it's not an assassination plot? Well, if you want to have it that way, why don't you just have it that way? Well, I don't want, it's not a question of what I want. I think it is what you want, Mr. Dodd. Mr. Helms, I'm reading to you from reports here, prepared at your request by the Inspector General. I understand I'm not fabricating this or creating out of all my... I understand that. I'm quoting. I understand that. Well, it's not a question of what I want. It's a question of what this committee would like to know, and the committee is not satisfied, I don't believe at this point, as to exactly what the characterization of Amlash was. Well, I've told you what I believe the characterization of Amlash to be. Well, how does that jive with this? If because we gave him a gun or a hypodermic syringe or whatever the case may be at his request because he had aims on Castro, if that is your definition of an assassination plot, then have it that way. That's quite satisfactory with me.
But don't you open yourself to blackmail? In other words, if you're involved in a covert operation and you're using elements, like for instance the mafia in some of the assassination attempts against Castro, isn't that really a very dangerous thing to get involved in?
You bet it is. It's very, very tricky. The mafia. Aren't you getting into trouble when you use them during World War II? As we now recently read, we use them in New York City. I had only known that we had used them in Marseille on the docks there. Of course, it's a tricky business. It's a part of the evaluation that a good intelligence officer and a good policymaker will make in deciding whether to use